If you're ready for freedom from the grind, then passive income from real estate investing is the best way to get you there. If you don't know where to start or what to do next, then the Rent Roll Radio Show is the best place to get you there. Join us while we discuss the best practices, strategies, and mindset you'll need and give you actionable content to get you from where you are to where you want to be. Hey, Rent Roll Radio. This is your host, Sterling Chapman. And today we're joined by Brian Green with Green Springs Capital Group. Brian, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us.
Sterling, how are you doing today? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing good. Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Where do you live? Where are you from? What'd you do before real estate, and what are you doing today?
Sure. So I'm located in Saratoga Springs, New York. It's about 3 hours north of New York City, same distance west of Boston, and same distance south of Montreal. So we're kind of right in between those three major cities. I'm originally from Central New York, over near Syracuse, and I came to the area for college. I played football at the University of Albany, and then that was maybe 20 years ago at this point. But we've stayed in the area ever since. I guess my story in business started right after college. I went into actually retail, and I started operating and owning my own chain of Verizon Wireless stores. I kind of grew up a regional chain of stores that at one point got to 23 of them throughout upstate New York, Vermont, and Western Massachusetts until I sold out to a larger competitor in 2014. And then I took the big dive into real estate.
Who'd you sell to?
It's a company called, I'm not even sure if they're around anymore, but they were called Go Wireless.
I don't think they are. TCC is the big third-party retailer, and I spent a decade in telecom.
Okay.
TCC is the big third-party retailer these days for Verizon, I believe.
Yep. So at the time, Go Wireless was out of Las Vegas, and I think they had around 400 stores across the country. So they were going around buying up market share. It was kind of perfect timing for me because they're a strategic buyer. They basically overpaid on the multiple because they knew that if they wanted to get into the market that we were in, they had to buy us out. So it was just the right place at the right time, and I'm very thankful that I'm no longer in retail sales.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
I actually met my wife in retail sales, and she thanks me every day that she doesn't have to do that anymore.
I know people talk to me now about like, oh, you're a property owner, you're a landlord. Isn't it terrible to deal with all the tenants and the problems? And I'm like, you have no idea how much easier this is than running, a chain of retail stores with all those different employees and moving parts.
It really is. It really is. So you sold and then parlayed into real estate. So how did that? What was your first step there?
Yeah. So when I sold, I didn't really have a plan because I wasn't actively trying to sell my company. They pursued us. Once we did it, we had a good sizable chunk of cash and capital in the bank. And I was kind of looking for my next kind of direction or industry that I want to get into. I'm a guy that's never worked for anybody else since I was working part-time in one of those cell phone stores in college, so that I knew there was no way I was going to like go into corporate America and get a job. So I started just thinking about different ways that I could invest the capital that I had from the sale of my company, and ultimately started reading about real estate, and it made a lot of sense to me. So maybe 3 or 4 months after the sale of my old company, I started buying small multifamily properties, just trying to figure out the business on my own. So I was doing the property management. I was interacting with the tenants. I was the fool that was, my traditional mind was like, all right, landlord, I'm going to go mow the lawn. I'm going to buy a snowplow. Like I'm going to do all this stuff, which was so stupid. And I had no business doing any of it. But anyways,
been there, done that.
Yeah. But you know what? That's how I figured everything out, right? I figured out how to talk to tenants. I figured out, what leasing documents I needed. I figured out like what contractors I needed to source. And then over time, that was in 2015. So over time, I just started stacking those multifamily properties on top of each other. I started building out a team. And then, at this point today, we've got a team of maybe 15 or 20 different employees and 1099 contractors. We operate a property management company. We're doing development deals. So it's kind of scaled out of that. But those early days is kind of where I figured out everything out.
Awesome. How's the property management company going?
So we only manage for our own properties. So pretty well.
Is there is there a reason that you're only managing for your own properties?
I think it's just organic, and that's how I started it. Innately, I think I'm an operations guy from the
Hmm.
core. So like ever since I went back to like running the retail stores, like it's all operations, it's inventory, it's scheduling, it's efficiencies. So when I was getting into real estate, that's kind of what I knew. So I knew how to build out companies. So I just started building out the company to support the properties that I was buying. And at first, it was nothing more than me doing 99% of the things. And then I hired out somebody else to do showings, right? Because I hated to do the showings. And then over time, it just kind of built out and out and out. And now we have, a construction component internally. And we've got, a whole type of leasing staff. But I feel like I'd rather control the process than outsource it to somebody else. And we're completely vertically integrated. So like we're in one geographic area, so we can do it.
Yeah, every uh, we've all had the same growing pains over the years, and every single issue I have is where I don't have control. It's the third party crappy property manager. It's the third party crappy contractor. It's the third party crappy this. I'm right there with you. We have a property management company now. We have a construction company now. We can't. We're spread out. We've got complexes across the country, so we don't manage and do work on all of our apartment complexes, but we definitely control what we can on the local side, and it has been a complete game changer.
And even when I'm probably you're probably experiencing the same thing. Like even when you gain that control over certain elements, you still talk as a company about like what your problems are and what your issues are and how you're going to grow. Everything that we still talk about, all the pain points we have are still all the areas where we're still outsourcing them. Right. So
Right.
it's marketing, it's landscaping and grounds. Like these are all the pain points we have because we're not doing it ourselves. Somebody else is doing it and it's inadequate or we don't have this, they don't have the skill set that we want. So all of the pain points continue to be what we're not doing ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nuts. I think that's just business, but that's what we find as we continue to grow.
Awesome. Well, so tell us about the types of projects you're doing.
Yeah. So today we're doing a multitude of different things. So our primary business strategy or methodology is to do heavy value add construction type projects. So I don't even call it value add anymore. I just call it redevelopment. So we'll go and buy older apartment buildings, usually small to mid-size properties, anywhere from, $1 million up to $3 to $4 million, total project costs. And we'll go in and we'll turn over, a lot of times the entire tenant base. Will spend something like $40,000 to $50,000 on every single apartment, making it all brand new again. And then we basically burr it back to ourselves. So once it's done and we've reestablished that new value, we go and get new financing on it, pay back all the money we have into it, and then we have a brand new building that we want to operate long term. We're trying to build out a portfolio, but we want to be able to recycle that same cash over and over again on the same properties.
Awesome.
So the redevelopment is the primary business, and then now we're doing ground up development as well. So we kind of have these two wings of our growth expansion. Internally, we have our own contractors on staff, and we have a core group of subs that do a lot of the work on our redevelopment projects. And now this first foray into ground up, we're outsourcing the GC work just because the scale is a little bit past what our capability is right now. But we want to be able to be doing both at the same time to build out the portfolio.
Awesome. So what kind of challenges did you come? It sounds like you've kind of half answered the question already, but you're just skipping the challenges. But my initial thought was like, what kind of challenges are you seeing transitioning from a value add type of construction to a true ground up development? Because those are completely different animals. I'd love to get into ground up development. I'm just scared and don't know anything about it, whereas I know value add backwards and forwards. So I'm just curious, does your value add experience translate well over to ground up, or is it such a different animal that?
To some extent, yes. So it does in the way that I know, I can accurately predict what the value of the building is going to be when I'm done, right? Anybody can do that does what you and I do. You look at the rent roll, you kind of figure out what it is. A lot of it's projections, but it's pretty accurate. The part we don't know, obviously, was the general contracting part, which we're outsourcing, as you said. But the third component to this, when you get into ground up, you start bringing in a whole nother element of bureaucracy and political will or lack thereof for back. So, I mean,
That's what I'm afraid of. When I hear development, it's like, oh, I'm gonna spend $3 million on a piece of land that I don't know if they're gonna let me build on yet.
Right. So the strategic way to do this, if you can get away with it, is like we are currently now. We have had this piece of property under contract since June of last year.
Yeah.
And we are still working through entitlements, but the entire contract is contingent upon us getting approvals.
That's what I've heard is the solution for that.
That's not always possible. Like, you're never going to be able to pull that off in like downtown Manhattan, but like, you're just going to kind of eat it and hope, and you're taking the risk profile as a developer. We're still getting a little bit of that. So I didn't buy the property yet, but we have exhausted, at this point, over probably $250,000 working on entitlements and drawings and engineers and architects. And it takes a ton of like patience and determination, right? Because you and I are, when you're entrepreneurial types, like there's not a lot of patience there, right?
No, there's no room for it. There's no room for it.
Yeah, you have to make quick decisions. And then when you go into this field where you're trying to get something approved and it's all administrative people that work for the city or the county, like there is no sense of urgency there whatsoever. There's more of a sense of protect myself, delay this to make sure we have all of our boxes checked than there is like, hey, this guy wants to spend $10 million building this complex. We should probably just let him do it. Like, that is not even within the realm of their thought process. So like for me, type A personality, I got to it's been, like I said, over a year, a lot of different planning board meetings and zoning variances. Like, you just kind of have to.
Man, you just seem like you have a better temperament than me. I don't know that I could make it through the process, man. I lose it, and I don't know. I guess it's different city by city, state by state, but where I live, if my toilet went out, at my house, you know what I mean? The commode stopped working. I say commode. You probably don't know what that word meant. I think that's
I've heard it before.
Southern grandma word, but like if my toilet went out, and me and my dad went to Home Depot and got a new toilet, and came home and my dad helped me change the toilet. Like, the city wants me to go file a permit and pay them a fee and have them come inspect that.
Yeah.
Like that is the official code. And I'm like, dude, I can't even, like, really? But that's where we're at in life.
Yeah. So we run into a lot of the same stuff, which touches this, on the ground up, we're hiring outside professionals. So all that stuff will be taken care of by them, the architect and the engineer and the GC. Yeah. But on redevelopment stuff, where we generally have to get a permit as well from the city, when the rules are so obstructive that they require permits for simple things like changing a toilet out, what it does is guys like us that are out redeveloping it, we're just like, okay, how can we submit this permit, generally speaking, or do we even have to? Because maybe subjectively this doesn't really require it, right? So then you start like in there, that gray world where do I need a permit or not a permit? And then like, you always hedge on the side of, I guess we don't need it. Like, it's a cosmetic upgrade, right? So like, we're not even going to bother. So that's what it does though. When the rules are so obtrusive, then people just stop getting permits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what did you accomplish? I don't know what that means, but hey, it's a learning curve, but you kind of have to work through the process to figure out what you do and what you need to ask permission for, and what you might just, say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Now I'll submit and we'll go forward.
And so this is kind of another one of my fears on the development side. What is something that I don't worry about as much on the value add side is, we do heavier value adds, but we don't ever drop occupancy usually too low. I mean, so like usually the bills are paid. In my mind, when you're building, you're developing like ground up, I mean, you're talking years of spending money with zero coming in. Like, how is that even structured or sustainable?
So are you talking about ground up deal or
the ground up? I mean, I know the value adds. We do those. Like, at least some money's trickling in to help pay the bills.
Yeah. But so two things on that. So we have on multiple occasions on a redevelopment projects brought the occupancy down to zero to accelerate construction. So we're not afraid to do that, and a lot of times it pays off because you can get things done in 6 months versus 2 years.
Sure.
And then you
Yeah,
can
we do it
achieve
in
that.
stage. Yeah.
Right.
It's harder to change the tenant base when you do it in stages as well.
Sure.
But the lending, I mean, depending on the size of the project, the lender and the type of lending, they don't always let you do that, right? Like Fannie's not going to let you drop below X occupancy. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
it's all local banks. You got to have flexibility of a local bank. So the other side of it is the ground up development. So on that, obviously we're going basically 18 months with no revenue, right? So you have to raise on the front end. So, we're syndicating the current one, we're syndicated it. So we just have to make sure that you're raising your holding costs as well as all of your construction costs and all your soft costs, because you're going to exhaust all of it basically with some margin of error. And then you're not going to get any income until, like you said, everything's done. So it's a long drawn out process. So we're not going to get, even as owners, we're not going to get paid a dime until year 2 or 3. So it's just all in until you get a big payout out, and then you have a brand new building moving forward.
So with your ground up developments, you're going to, just like the bird, you're going to keep them or you're going to sell them?
Yeah, we're going to keep them. So on that one, we kind of went with, I don't know, you might have heard like the infinite return model, right? So even for our investors that are investing in, the thought process is, as soon as we're done and we're stabilized, we're going to refinance Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac at the new valuation, return everyone's capital, and then we're going to put it in our portfolio, and our company is going to manage it long term. So what I don't want to turn this into a syndication conversation, but what I normally don't like about the common syndication models, it requires you to sell it, right? Because if you don't sell it,
the 5-year to get the
because otherwise your numbers don't make any sense, right? Because your is too low, your returns are too low. But if you can give them all their capital back, and now they have a little more patience, because they're not there's no exposure.
Exactly. And so I was talking to Brandon Turner and Ken McElroy about this, and Ken never sells. He's never sold anything. He refis, and he goes, and you know what? He goes, people don't want to sell. Like we're so conditioned by these private equity groups, right? That the model is, hey, 5-year, double your money, 20%. This is how it works. He goes, and so we've got these private equity groups from New York coming down into all these apartment, and like that's kind of trickling down to how we operate. He goes, but the reality is the retail investor guy, the guy that I'm raising money from, that Ken's raising money from, that Brandon's raising money from, like what everybody really wants is an income stream for life, right? Yep. Like they're not, it's true. If you sell it in that 5 years, you can maximize the IRR, and that's kind of how they analyze the deals. But if you hold it indefinitely, that's what you're stacking indefinite like cash flow. And that's what everybody wants, right? At the end of the day.
No doubt. And the other thing that's never factored into the IRR is when you give them their money back, now they have to go pay tax, right? So your IRR is not really, it's not a real number. Like I give you back 100 grand. You might have invested 100 grand. I give you back 150, whatever that calculates out to. But in reality, on that 50 grand, you're paying long-term gains. So, you're creating kind of a problem for your investor by giving them their money back. Because now they're like, oh, there's nothing else I can roll it into because I don't have any use for it. Like I like the income.
Sure.
But to the point, yeah.
Sure. Our last cash out refi, 100%, we just happened to be, by luck, we were doing another raise in the middle of our last cash out refi execution, and 100% of our investors said, okay, well, what do you want me to do with it now? Like, well, you can give it back to us for this other deal. They all did.
Yeah. So you constantly have to stay on that hamster wheel too, where you're kind of always sourcing new deals, right? Because if you're going to buy something and sell it in 5 years, then what? Like you've got this whole organization. You got to keep feeding your organization by keep continuing to buy things. Whereas instead, if you're able to hold them, you don't really have to buy as much because you're still going to maintain the asset.
Absolutely. So what's next for you guys?
A lot of it is expansion and kind of growth of our company, both the investing portion of the company where we're doing capital raising and the bigger strategic thing, and also our property management company. So I think I meant in the new development, I mentioned that we outsourced the general contractor role. But for our redevelopments, that role is my brother. My brother's my business partner. So kind of the long-term vision is for him to expand his capacities so that he can be the GC, which means everything is in-house even further to our point from before, right?
Sure.
On ground up developments, because if we can bring that capacity in, then there's kind of no limits to what we can buy or what we can build. So right now he's actively working with like you never hear of this in our world. There's always like business coaches and mindset coaches. I said, no, I said, you just need a general contracting coach. So
Yeah, no. I've
yeah.
actually been researching them all week.
Yeah. So we found a guy locally that we actually were friends with. We played college football together, and he does it on a bigger scale, but for a company. So, he's gonna act as his coach, and then he's also, and the GC we hired for the project. Obviously my brother's gonna sit in on every single meeting and learn that, basically document everything.
Sure.
So the thought process being that we can kind of grow even faster if we can do it internally.
That's awesome. So, is there different types of GC license for commercial versus like residential? Like, is there different type of licensing for building a ground up apartment complex versus building a neighborhood?
You're gonna, this might blow your mind here, but in New York, there is no official license for a general contractor. There's a license for an electrician, for a plumber, for specialty trades like that. But to be a GC, there is no official license, which is crazy since we're in New York State. But I'm sure in the New York City that they do require that, but in the rest of the state, so there's no licensing whatsoever.
Nice. So you said you're going to use a general contractor. Are you going to use any of your own guys as subs, even though you're going to outsource the general contracting model? But here's a question, and I'll lead with why I'm asking the question, because I'm trying to. This is a lot of times why I have the podcast, so I can ask smarter people than me how to solve my own problems. So I've got a remodel license, right? My construction company, because in Louisiana, you don't need anything for a remodel license. You can do a job up to $75,000 with insurance, right? And a stamp of approval from the state, which we got, right? To be a builder, to do jobs over $75,000, you need a builder's license, which is a really, really comprehensive test that's going to take 6 months to study for. So I've got somebody that wants me to do, they got an 8-plex, the job is going to be more, the total job is going to be more than $75,000, right? Sure. But do I have to do the whole job at once? Can he hire me to go do a roof? And then next week, can he hire me to come back and come do a unit?
Sure.
You know what I mean? These are the or is the better route to say, because like I've got all the laborers, I've got all of the subs, I just don't have the GC builder's license. So is the correct route to get a GC builder, pay him a freaking GC builder fee, and just have all my subs work under him?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it depends on your situation. So for us on this project, we are not going to use our existing guys that are working in-house, or probably most of our subs, only because the scale of the new build is larger than what we're used to. So could they do it? Yes, but it'd probably be much slower than if we just use the subs that the GCs are doing. And the cost of capital, obviously with rates going up and the holding costs when you're making zero revenue, to your point earlier, speed is kind of the most important thing. So if we can get built in 12 months, instead of maybe it would take us 18 or 24 months by using our own guys, then the obvious choice is to do it in 12.
Absolutely. That's a great strategic point that a lot of people miss sometimes. The DIYers, it's like, great. I mean, that's cool. You saved $2,000 rehabbing the house yourself, but it took you 4 months. You lost $1,000 a month in rent.
No, I know. I still have this conversation with my brother all the time because we're measuring efficiencies of contracting and how long it's supposed to take. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like we can do this many apartments per month, but how do we do twice as many? Because if we can move through the building twice as fast, the profits are way better. So I'm always pushing that envelope, but it's kind of a push and pull all the time.
Absolutely. So I want to hop over to our radio round real quick. I just got 3 questions for you to help our listeners get to know you a little better. The first one is, what's your favorite book?
So this changes all the time. I read all the time, every morning. So my current favorite book that I read this year is called The Wealthy Gardener. I don't know if you've read that or not before.
I have not.
A mindset type book, but I've never read a book in my life that has a greater culmination of like outstanding quotes and like one line type things. So the purpose of the book is he weaves through the story of, he kind of uses gardening as a metaphor for life and for success and for business and for development. So he has all these type of anecdotes. He's talking about how, gardening versus this. And it's really just each chapter is very short, but like the book is phenomenal. Like I read it and I was like, this is the greatest book I've ever read. That'll change next year with another great book, but it was really good. And the author is, I've never even heard of the guy, John Soforic, Soforic. But fantastic book.
I'm sold. I'm gonna read it.
Yeah.
What's your favorite quote?
So this one's, I'm not a guy that really memorizes quotes, but my favorite is always, I don't know if you're familiar with Teddy Roosevelt's quote of the man in the arena.
Yeah.
So it's kind of long. I mean, I could read it.
You don't need it. You don't need to read it. No, that's great. We'll put it in the show notes. I've actually, I've ordered a man in the arena print to put on the wall.
To the point on that quote, so when they read it, or the quote because you're putting it on your wall, but he talks a lot about critics and not listening to critics. That's basically the consensus of don't listen to people that are just criticizing you, right? So I kind of
don't take advice from people that you don't want to be like.
Sure, right, and that's what I mean. Like I take the quote kind of the flip side of it is like whatever you want to be in life, whatever you want to accomplish, whether it's success in business or being a great father or real estate or fitness or whatever, like don't take advice from people that aren't actually doing that. Like if you wanted to be as healthy as you possibly could or be extremely would you go ask a guy that just completed an Ironman, or would you ask your uncle who hasn't worked out a day in his life? Like I feel like in life too many people take advice from people that are just have no expertise in the field. So like why would you listen to them in the first place? So I take that quote kind of literally. I know what he's talking about critics, but I kind of flip it and think about like, you need an expert. Like if you want to be an expert in something, go ask somebody that's an expert.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, I love it. And the last one is, what do you do outside of work? What do you like to do for fun?
So I'm kind of a crazy fitness guy. I do kind of intense CrossFit workouts. I go to like a local gym here who's the gym is run by actually the guy just finished third in the world in like the Masters division. So I go down and work out these guys that are, I'm 42 now. So these guys are 20s, some of them in their 30s. I mean, the guy that won that is older than me, but I go down there because, I think it's important to obviously be physically fit. That translates for me completely over to my mental and kind of emotional wellness. But I also feel like it's important to put yourself in that room, just like you do in business or in masterminds, where you're going to get beat up a little bit, right? I go down there. I want to go down there and I want them to beat me. Because it's only going to make me better. If I just work out at the YMCA or something and I'm by far the fittest guy there, that's not helping me at all. Like, so I want to go down there. And so when I'm not working, my main focus is on fitness, and it's a huge part of my life.
Yeah. Fitness and exercise have always been a huge part of my life, and never having anything to do with my physical appearance. It has always been, mental and spiritual and just health. Like I can remember my dad bringing me to the gym before school when I was in elementary school. And it is a habit that I've kept up with all these years. And I mean, it is, when I'm having a bad day, it can turn it around. If I weigh wrong, it can turn around. On the days I don't start with a workout, I know it. And everybody around me knows it, it is such an integral part. So I definitely feel you there. I spent maybe 2 days in CrossFit. I don't know why CrossFit just didn't jive with me. I've done a couple half Ironman and several marathons, but I really just love lifting weights in the gym.
Yeah.
I used to lift heavier ones, but now my shoulders and joints and stuff as I get older. So now I just go and lift lighter ones.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you. Good.
Well, how can our listeners find out more about you, get in touch with you, invest with you?
Sure. So our website is greenspringscapitalgroup.com, or they can reach out to me on Instagram at greenspringscapital. Either one of those places, they can send me a message. Happy to help or talk through development further, or any other aspect of real estate or fitness, I guess, now that we just touched on that.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Yeah.
Brian, well, thank you so much for joining the show. I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot. I know our listeners are going to learn a lot. And when it comes out, I'm going to listen to it again and take some more notes. So thanks for having us, and look forward to keeping up with you on your journey.
Great. Thank you, Sterling. Thanks for having me.
This episode was brought to you by Crestworth Capital. If you're a busy professional and ready to make passive income from real estate investing, then go to crestworthcapital.com, where you'll be able to download a free copy of our ebook to help you get started today. Until next week, happy investing.